I get a call from Microsoft, and Microsoft says, "Hey, look, we're looking for head of investigations for Latin America. Are you interested?" Now, there are a couple of former people from DEA that were working at Microsoft at the time, but when I spoke with them later, they said that they had not given my name to anybody in Microsoft. So I'm to this day don't know how Microsoft found out about me.
Really?
Right? Yeah. But they reached out and they asked me to interview, and I fly up to interview, and the interview went really well. And they basically said, "Okay, we want you in Brazil." And I said, "Okay, no problem." I said, "I'd rather be in Miami. The Latin American headquarters of yours is in Miami." I said, "What if we start in Miami?" They said, "Okay, we'll tell you what, we'll start you in Miami, but we'll in a year's time, we want to look and revisit this to see if maybe move you back to Brazil." I said, "Fine." So at that point, I ended up resigning from DEA to take a position as head of investigations for Latin America for Microsoft.
Looking back on that, with 15 years of DEA, mistake? I mean, is it a mistake because, what is it? Would it have been 20 for a full retirement?
No, it'd be 25 because
25. Okay, so you had to do 10 more.
Yeah, it would have been 25 because of the age limit there.
Okay.
But today I kind of kick myself for not doing it in the sense that I don't have a pension, right? I lost that. But
yeah,
I look at everything like my time in DEA was absolutely wonderful. I had the time of my life. I learned a lot. I had a blast. I grew as a person. And then I moved to Microsoft. In my time in Microsoft, I had a blast. I grew as a person, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
What kind of work were you doing at Microsoft?
Okay, so I was doing intellectual property investigation, so it was anti-counterfeiting work. And so,
okay, so let me ask you this before we get into that. Did you have any intellectual property experience with being an IA prior to taking that job as Microsoft?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing whatsoever. But I learned very quickly that intellectual property investigations are identical to drug investigations.
Yep.
Because what you do is you look for the smallest person, you buy from them, try and go up, find out who their supplier is, then try and find out who their manufacturer and importer is, and then take them down at the source. So I learned that very, very quickly. What I had no clue about was the business world. Okay, DEA, we had right or wrong. So if it took you 5 years to put somebody in jail because he's a drug trafficker, it took you 5 years. And the resources, not unlimited, but you had enough resources to take care of things. In the corporate world, it doesn't work that way. If you can't take them down in 2 to 3 weeks, they move on to something else, something more interesting. So, and I learned this the hard way. So, and I can't get into a specific product because,
Sure.
but so there's a product. I go into Microsoft. I say, "Hey, look, I found they're making this, they're counterfeiting this exact product, and they're doing about 10,000 of these a week." And they said, "Chris, not interested." I go, "Okay." Go back to my desk and start working with some things, and I go back the next week. I say, "Hey, it's actually much bigger. They're doing like 20,000 a week." I said, "Chris, we're not interested." I said, "Jesus." So I tried a third time when I found out they were doing 100,000 of these. I found this huge organization. I went back and I said, "Doing 100,000 of these things." He said, "Chris, how many times do I have to tell you? Not interested." I said, "You know what? Okay." I went back to my desk. I wrote out my resignation, walked back in and handed the resignation to him. So, "What the hell is this?" I said, "Well, you hired me to do a job, and you're not allowing me to do the job, and I'm not just going to sit here and do nothing." And they said, whoa, Chris, sit down. Sit down. I said, "What we need you to understand is we don't sell the product you're looking at in Brazil. It's not being sold in Brazil, so it's not taking away from market share, right?" So we will be launching it in 2 years. And when we launch that product in 2 years, we're going to want you to go and clean it up. But now it's a waste of time and money. And right then it clicked. It said, it's all about the money.
Yeah.
And that was an invaluable lesson I learned for corporations. Yeah, right and wrong, they do believe in right and wrong. Absolutely. Every private company has its own internal ethics, and they will be guided by those ethics. But in general terms, if we go after a counterfeiter and we can't get them within 3 weeks, 4 weeks time, move on to the next one that we can get, because that's all the time and energy they want to expend towards a particular counterfeiter. So, invaluable experience. But so what we're doing is doing intellectual property investigation where we go after people who are counterfeiting Microsoft products. And we had some really interesting raids, some of the biggest raids that they had up until that point. And I had a blast doing that too, because we got to use a lot of creativity in doing some of the raids.
What was your position?
I had investigations for, I had head of anti-counterfeiting investigations for Microsoft, for Latin America, for Microsoft Latin America. But for example, we had one big case in Paraguay. It was one of the cases that I had done, and there's shopping centers, an 8-story shopping center. You go in and 2 different stalls or 5 different stalls selling counterfeit Microsoft products. We'll go in, take them down, and come back in the afternoon. There'd be different name, and they're selling the products again. And like, we got to do this different, right? So I flew down and met with the Minister of Interior for Paraguay, and he and I had a big debate back and forth for about 3 hours, and saying, well, why should the government of Paraguay help the private corporation? You should be helping our people. And we had debating back and forth, but ultimately I found out that this guy wanted to be president at one time. So I said to him, look, if you help me out on this investigation, I said, I'll make sure that when we get the raid completed, that we'll have somebody from CNN there, so you can stand up and say, hey, this is the first in a number of things. And he said, oh, okay, perfect. So what we ended up doing was we gathered in his office, we gathered the chief of police, we gathered chief of the tax department, immigration, and even got a hold of the county the guys that take care of the building inspections to make sure that they're safe, right? So we got all these people together and we coordinated this big investigation, but they weren't told what it was about. They had no idea what the target was. They're told, come to me for the target. And so what we ended up doing is this was in Ciudad del Este, Paraguay, which is 4.5 hours ride from Asuncion, the capital of Asuncion, where we were. So I rented 2 buses. And next thing you know, we loaded police up and all these people on these buses. The judge is there. The judge was the only guy that knew what was going on besides myself. And we ended up grabbing all of their cell phones, putting all the police officers' cell phones all in bags. And as we rode down, we gave briefings, and halfway through we switched, and the judge gave the other briefing and I gave briefings. And we showed up at the shopping center and 2 huge tourist buses, and they're thinking, oh, these people are coming in to buy. Next thing you know, we conduct a raid. The 8 stores, we ended up doing 8 stores. We ended up closing down the shopping center for 4 days because they had to do reforms for, there was illegal kitchens, the access ways were blocked and things. And this happened right before Christmas. And we did it in a time. So it was really interesting because we used a whole bunch of different laws that had nothing to do with intellectual property, but it served our purpose in trying to at least block their commerce for 4 days. We did the same thing in Mexico at another time, and they ended up a huge crowd convened, and they ended up taking back they ended up holding the police hostage for a little bit, but they ended up taking back all of the counterfeit products. But we ended up shutting down that shopping center for 30 days in mid-November to mid-December, while they did the reform. So anyway, so I had a blast doing that job as well.
It's interesting you're talking about that interaction that you had where it's like the Brazil thing, and they don't really aren't. It's not that they're not listening to you, but they don't want to act on it, and then it kind of clicks. I've had some interactions with some corporations where it's like, hey, you guys could get a lot farther if you did X, and they just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you have to switch that mindset from government agency or government agent, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do, to something else because, you know, they have their own.
Yeah, in government, corporations, each corporation has its own different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And there's some corporations I work with that have former law enforcement people as head of their investigations unit. And they're great because, I mean, we speak the same language.
Right.
They know, and others you have to kind of try and educate. And there's some that say, look, I don't care what it says. I've got a client that says, I don't care what the law states, we won't allow you to do a trash run.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we feel that's an invasion of somebody's privacy. We will not allow you to do it.
Mm.
So you have to abide by what they say, right? But
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, well, you're at Microsoft. You're only there for 2 years. Why are you only there for 2 years?
okay. I realized that all the people that I was hiring to do the work for Microsoft, that I could do a better job than they could. I mean, I had spent, at this point in my DEA career, I had spent over 10 years in Latin America. I've been in probably every country in Latin America at least once. And I realized that the people I was hiring to do the job weren't doing a professional job, in my opinion. So at the time, I had grown the position in Microsoft so much as well that we needed 2 people to do the job, or they wanted to split it to 2 people to do the job, but they didn't have the headcount to do it. So I saw that as a perfect opportunity. Actually, I want to say I saw it. My wife saw it as a perfect opportunity. She was the one that recommended that I do this. But I actually came in and I told him, look, why don't we do this? I said, I'll quit. I'll resign from my position, and you can hire somebody in my replacement. They'll take half of the region. I'll take the other half of the region to do it for you as an outsource. They're like, well, you'd really quit and get rid of your benefits and all? And I said, yeah. And they're like, well, that's the best of both worlds for us. So that's what I ended up doing. And they guaranteed me 20 hours per week for the first 6 months on the job that I had my own company. So that's how I started the company. And my company was started I had a small apartment in Argentina that I moved to. It was a little vacation apartment. It was like 600 square feet, right? Really tiny thing. And we had a balcony that was 1 meter wide by 2 meters long. So it was like, 6 foot by 3 foot, right? I enclosed the balcony, bought a laptop, and I sat on that balcony, and my wife sat with her back to me. And that's how we started the company.
Wow.
And the first 2 months, it was like, what did I do? Because I had one client. I had no idea about how to get additional clients,
Mhm.
right? And all of a sudden, a client that I had helped, one of the other investigative agencies that we had hired on, another section of Microsoft had hired on, and that other section had some issues with the work they did, and I was sent to go figure out what was right. And the other agency actually did a pretty good job. They were correct. So I defended them on that issue. They found out that I was in Argentina now, and so they gave me 1 job, and the next thing you know, they gave me 5 jobs, and the next thing you know, it started snowballing from there.
Yeah, I found that if you're competent and you're good at your job, your reputation gets out there, and all of a sudden people are reaching out to you.
Yeah.
Mm.
So then my company went from the balcony to the second year, I rented another apartment in the same building. It was there for about 4 or 5 years. Then I moved out to a big office building. Then I opened an office in Miami, and essentially it's a small office here in Miami, and it was more of a marketing office than anything. And then about 8 or 9 years ago, or 10 years ago, I shifted my main office from Argentina to Paraguay because of the labor laws and issues that are really archaic in Argentina. And now I have my main office is at the World Trade Center in Paraguay, where I've got 7 people working there right now that are 24 hours, not 24 hours, 12 hours a day, not 24 hours a day. But we've got them working based out of Asunción, Paraguay right now.
So, Chris, your company's called Mick Worldwide, and I'm assuming you're specializing. You only deal, or maybe you don't deal, but you're dealing with intellectual property, right?
Well, we deal with all types of corporate investigations and securities.
Okay.
We're full service. We do everything from fraud investigations to internal investigations, identifying assets. We do due diligence investigations. We do intellectual property investigations. We do a lot of insurance investigations. We also do security for VIPs that are traveling throughout the region. So we got people who are in the entertainment world or who are executives who travel. We'll put bodyguards, armored vehicles, and security agents to cover them while they're
Wow, so
they're
you've
traveling. So-
really kind of expanded to everything.
Yeah, and we cover the entire region. Right now, I've been. There's not a country I haven't been in the region at least a dozen times, and we have people in every country in the region. And while we seem to be a small company where we only have 7 full-time employees in Paraguay, 1 here and 1 in Argentina, there are about 90 subcontractors that we use every month. That we give them about 80 to 90% of their work.